This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. My co-hosts, Emily Campagno, Kayleigh McEnany. Also with us today, Leslie Marshall and Joey Jones. Russian shelling has been nearly nonstop in Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv for 2 weeks now. It's the 20th night. The relentless assault has reduced entire blocks to dust and rubble. The Russian invasion, now war, has driven out more than 3 million Ukrainians from their country. Now, there's word Putin's forces may only be able to keep fighting at full capacity for another 10 to 14 days, after meeting up with much stronger resistance than they had anticipated. Ukraine's artillery fights are hard. They're fierce, firing missile after missile toward Russian targets. Leslie Marshall, as you hear Senator Graham talk about the bipartisan nature, too, of the unity now, but the White House not on board with what they're talking about. Poland almost went alone because the White House tried to deny that they even had knowledge that the MiGs were on, potentially on their way from Poland and that we knew of the deal. What's your reaction to it all?
Well, you know what, I have to agree with Joey on this. I think as Americans, we know our history. We know Vietnam. We know Korea. We know Afghanistan, and the list goes on. And do we want to be a part of a catastrophic conflict? Now, when we talk about sending equipment, I agree wholeheartedly, but I also am not a military expert. And I defer to military experts, and some military experts say that it would take too long to train those individuals with that particular aircraft.
No, but that's not true. They're asking for F-100s. They're asking for more vintage-like, I don't want to say like 1950s, but more vintage-like MiG-29s compared to what we fly now. That's not true. In fact, they're some of the best flyers in the world of those particular planes. So that's not true. They can bring them in on train cars. They can bring them in across the Polish border. They don't have to fly in that airspace and share that with Russians to get them in. There are so many things we could be doing, Leslie, that are short of what we all agree on. I don't want World War III. Nobody wants World War III. Putin, Lindsey Graham says he doesn't want it either. But what do we do in a short order of time now? And they do know how to fly those planes.
Well, again, I defer to military experts, and I've heard that there's arguments on both sides. Look, I look at this, and I think many Americans do, as a modern-day David and Goliath. And obviously, President Zelensky would be David. We thought, and many people thought, even experts thought, that this was going to be 72 hours. Now they're saying this could be a couple more weeks. Some people are saying this could go until May. When you look at Russia, when you look at their troops, when you look at the defections, there's even talk about America, the United States, offering asylum, as a carrot to the Russian soldiers who don't want to be in this fight, who want to defect from the Russian army, and who actually want to defect from Russia completely. And you see President Zelensky speaking to that as well. I'm one of many people in the world that looks at the underdog, not saying that President Zelensky and Ukraine are an underdog, but that's how it was perceived. But what we're also seeing here is that Vladimir Putin, I think he knows. I think he knows he's losing. Look at the tone of the latest talks that they had. President Zelensky came out and said there was a change of tone from Russia, and Vladimir Putin said there were some positive things, there were some positive aspects. The world knows, and certainly Vladimir Putin knows, that his demands of Ukraine to completely demilitarize, to never have the idea of NATO, to give Russia control of a certain portion of their nation, those three things that he is demanding and holding hard and steadfast on, those aren't going to happen. This fight is long from over. There's a battle and there's a war.
You do realize that a whole lot of people are going to die while you say he doesn't.
President Biden is reportedly considering a trip to Europe to shore up NATO allies after sending Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, Press Secretary Jen Psaki says nothing has been decided yet. Watch.
Well, we are, of course, closely engaged with our NATO partners and European allies, as you've heard us say a number of times, about the next steps in diplomacy, whether that's providing additional humanitarian or security assistance or the mechanics for future conversations. But there's not been any final decision about a trip.
The president's potential trip comes after she faced heavy criticism, especially given comments and interactions like these in Poland and Romania.
I am here, standing here on the northern flank, on the eastern flank.
How long should we be bracing for This really sort of historic inflation and some unprecedented gas prices.
Sure. And for President Duda, I wanted to know if you think, and if you asked the United States to specifically accept more refugees.
Okay. A friend in need is a friend indeed.
I think it's been pretty clear in what we've shown on air that Vice President Kamala Harris does not know history, that there is a dearth of leadership. She has inappropriate affect. It's not staffing. There's a whole host of things that lend her to be ill-equipped and, frankly, undeserving of that position in multiple ways, especially given the crisis that is facing, frankly, the globe in light of Putin. And yet, for some reason, those in mainstream media continue to say that criticism, apt criticism of her continued ineptitude, incompetence, and failures is somehow on the basis of racism and misogyny. Leslie.
I'm a white woman, in case you didn't notice, and a woman of color. I really don't feel, and I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback for this, that this was steeped in racism. However, to everyone on the panel with a uterus, unless you've had a hysterectomy, sorry, Joey, we know that as women, you do have to raise the bar in this man's world a bit higher. So I do think that there's more criticism of women leaders, not just Kamala Harris and not just in the United States. So I do think there's some merit to that, but not the racism aspect, in my opinion.
Leaders
Skyrocketing prices and runaway inflation could become a full-fledged Biden recession. That's the warning in a Washington Post opinion piece that says 3 factors are about to make things much, much worse. A new COVID wave in China sparking more supply chain worries, the ongoing sticker shock at the pump, and the grocery store as Russia's war rages on. And the Federal Reserve expected to raise interest rates this week. And as the risk of recession increases, President Biden wants all the blame on Putin. I bet he does. And he's turning to TikTok users to make it happen. Oh, it's all the Putin gas spike. Leslie, Tom Bevan, though, putting up this chart showing consumer confidence at an 11-year low. The American people aren't buying the TikTok star's appeal. 70% in ABC blame Biden for inflation. 70% blame Biden for the Biden gas hike. Leslie.
Depends which headline you read. I don't blame Putin or Biden because not one world. I don't blame Putin. I don't blame Putin. I know what the polling says, but there are realities, and the reality is that every single nation in the world is suffering financially. So I know that President Biden and the United States are leaders of the free world, but we're not the leader of each country within the free world. 1. 2, we also don't see the headlines that the United States has led the world in the recovery, that the stock market increased 27% last year. Why aren't we talking about also that the price of a barrel of oil has decreased and is continuing to decrease? Are there pieces in play with any administration, with legislation that they put forth that can affect and contribute to a potential recession, God forbid, or to inflation? Absolutely. But one piece of legislation, everybody likes to talk about Build Back Better, didn't pass. I mean, one piece of legislation that has a big price tag to it. And additionally, there are other realities with responsibility. The Federal Reserve is very much responsible, and some people say was too passive and that interest rate should have been hiked last year. So this is a multifaceted problem. It can't be blamed just on Vladimir Putin, because certainly this war and this invasion have contributed to the economy worldwide, but it also can't be blamed solely on President Biden. And by the way, your former boss, Donald Trump, I said the same thing when he was president.
Let me get in here. Larry Summers saying,
leader of one nation.
Are you familiar with Larry Summers? He's an former Obama economist, says it's wrong to blame Putin.
Yes.
The beauty of all of this, Emily, is you can't, Leslie, meanwhile, on Russian state TV, they're calling this denazification of Ukraine an outright lie. They're only targeting military targets, they say. That's a lie. We saw the maternity hospital this time last week on our own network.
Oh, we also saw them say that they were putting out the fire at the nuclear plant. There's just so much negative propaganda. By the way, and I'm not comparing Putin to Hitler, so don't get me wrong, but this is what was done by that party in Germany prior to them taking power. They put out a lot of negative propaganda, not just about Jewish people, but about the state of Germany and about the countries around them. So when you look at Russia, what I love about this woman the bravery, because she knew she was truly risking her life.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I am with you, Emily. I'm a bit skeptical when I hear 10 days. I was so relieved when I heard that she showed up in court today, because that's what we expect, don't we, in Russia? If you speak up against this government, or if you run against Vladimir Putin, his opponent is still in prison, that's what happens to you. You end up in jail and they throw away the key, or you disappear, or we know sometimes nerve agents are used if you're in the UK or other places. So what I love about this is this woman risked her life for freedom. And we, as a beacon of freedom throughout the world, shouldn't just support her, but it's even more so the reason that we should never support Vladimir Putin.
Yeah,
that we should always be supporting David in this David against Goliath fight, President Zelensky and Ukraine. And I've got to say, I don't think I would have the guts to do that. I just admire this woman. God bless her, seriously.
Yeah.